Welcome everyone to an episode of the Ol'Timers Comic Book Show, the show where the hosts aren't old, but the comics most certainly are. Joining me as always,
Hey, Johnny, I'm old.
no, we're not. We're only as young as the people we feel, which just screws me over because my wife's older than me. So great, fantastic, son of a gun. For everyone who's not observant, as always, we're down a person. It's because, see, what happened was Tua Tagovailoa got injured, and now 13th Crusader has gone to Miami to try out for the Dolphins.
He's abandoning the Giants
I don't know.
in week 3.
Mind you, we could try for the Giants because I think their quarterback situation is worse than ours. For sure. For sure.
They should put Hawk Tua in there at quarterback.
Yeah. Your guy, who's your Mac Jones? Mac Jones will be getting some love this in the next couple of weeks. He'll be getting traded somewhere.
You think so?
Yeah. I think so. I think it was solid in his rookie year. I really do. I think lack of talent on offensive talent, no receivers to throw to, no running back. You can see how dire the Patriots offensive line was on Thursday against the Jets. So
yeah, I'm convinced that that the Patriots ruined Mac Jones, and
agreed.
Agreed. Who knows? But the thing is that I think that what happened to Mac Jones is something that he's probably never going to recover from. He probably missed those development opportunities, and we'll see. Hey, if I get proved wrong, I get proved wrong. But behind the scenes, all the stuff that was going on back here with the fact that he's a dirty player and all that stuff.
I think I agree with you to an extent, but then Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
I mean, Sam. Did you see that? Did you see the bomb he threw?
Yeah.
I'm like, Sam Darnold.
I don't know.
I don't know. All right. So the Dolphins and the Patriots are both sitting at 1-1, correct?
No, the Patriots played Thursday night, so now they're 1-2.
Sorry, they did play. That's right. They
did
1-2. So the Giants are they're laying ducks left, right, and center. I'm just waiting for the Giants to take on the Carolina Panthers, which will be the first ever 0-0 score tie after overtime in the NFL.
Well, before we start getting into the comics, do you think Tua should retire after his third major concussion?
My personal opinion, my personal opinion is this: it's his call, regardless, because it's his body, is what he wants to do. I'm sure that there are outside influences playing on his mind, what the financial impact of is if he retires. Does he get his guaranteed money? What's he have to do to get his guaranteed money and all that sort of stuff? As long as he does what's best for him, I'm all right with that. I'm not one of these blowhards that says that Tua is the greatest quarterback in the world. I'm also not the guy that says Tua is the worst quarterback in the world. What I will say is from a non-fan point of view, from a person-to-person perspective, I'd be worried if you're taking that many concussions, man. I mean, just look at Steve Young, look at Troy Aikman. Yep. These are big name quarterbacks who are, especially young, mobile, running around all that. Aikman was probably one of the last pure pocket passes Dallas ever had, and you kind of he just stood there and he took hit after hit. I remember when Young went out with his concussion, that was him done.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think only he can decide, and I'm all right with that. If it was me, I'd be like, yeah, enough's enough. How many more? Do I really need that extra 20 million for whatever reason? How many millionaires do I need to be to get by in life?
I just go back to the footage of his first concussion when he got hit and his fingers all went like that.
The Cincinnati one, yes.
Yep. I was like, pull him then, and I wouldn't have said boo if he decided to retire right then.
That's a really good point. If he decides to retire that in the long term, I'm all right with that. I'm like, do it, it's your body. I respect you, man. Go for it.
Yep.
If he goes and comes back and then plays well and whatever, dude, that's your body. Well done. I respect you for that. It's his call everywhere. I personally would. I'd be thinking about it. I would be, but it's fine.
He's probably having a lot of conversations, I bet. So
I bet he is. I'm surprised at Ryan Tannehill. A lot of noise last week about Ryan Tannehill coming back to the Dolphins, and I know that that's a scheme mismatch. But with that offensive line, you take Tannehill because he can run.
Yeah,
But that's what do I
for
know?
sure. Yeah.
All right, before we get into the comics, the certain thing happens every year. We didn't think about. Well, I kind of half thought about doing a show based on this, but Bud always gives me crap for bringing lots of Batman books up. So it is, of course, Batman and his 85th birthday. So in honor of Bats, I went out yesterday and I bought a couple of back issues. There you go.
Hey,
Batman 401.
That's the first issue of Batman I ever bought off the rack.
There you go. And then this one's a bit of this is one from my childhood. I remember having this one as a kid. And there you go. I picked this up. It has got a bit of a UK price stamp on, which detracts massively from the condition, but the rest of it is pretty fine, pretty good. Covers a square and all that sort of stuff. So if you're in the UK or in the Northeast, you need to check out this place, Mr. Chimney's Emporium. It's on Facebook. It used to be like a little kind of like a retro store, but they've kind of changed it up now. It's still a retro store, but they've got tons and tons of back issues, Marvel, DC, independent stuff. They've got a coffee house on the side, my friend. You can go. You can go in with your partner. They can have a nice little cherry bakewell with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee whilst you're thumbing through the racks, getting your comics on there. So,
or you could get your comics and sit and have a coffee.
Exactly.
While you peruse your findings.
That's exactly right. So check it out if you're in Redcar or anywhere in the northeast of the UK. Check it out. That's my big shout out for today. No, really good. I'm really pleased to see the guys doing well. Okay.
Excellent.
Cool. Customer service announcement done. We can get back on with the show. Right. So we've said that it's Batman's 85th, but Professor, you were telling me it was somebody else's anniversary year this year, right?
Yeah. So that's the theme of the show today is we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Wolverine.
Snick.
Yeah.
You know what? We don't talk a lot about Wolvie, considering he's so popular.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about, we've talked X-Men, we've talked, I don't know if we've ever done a single issue of Wolverine, have we?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
You know who tell us this? The 30th Crusader.
He would tell us what date we talked about what. So, but yeah, there was a couple of big things with with Wolverine this year, with the Deadpool and Wolverine movie that came out. And
sorry, you mean Wolverine and Deadpool, right?
Yeah, that one. Yeah, Wolverine and Deadpool. Well, we're not going to talk about that because it's not 25 years old. But there's a lot of stuff that was going on this year. The major con I go to every year, Terrificon, had a 50th anniversary of Wolverine kind of centered. They had tons of creators there. That Claremont and many others.
Of course, we did talk about Wolverine not so long ago when what's his name, Roy Thomas, came out and said, "I deserve a credit for creating Wolverine."
And I couldn't remember if it was you that I talked to about that. But when I went to the con last month, I did get into a nice conversation with you might know Paul Kupperberg, and you might know Terry Kavanagh, who is a Marvel writer and editor. And we had a nice conversation about Roy Thomas taking credit for the co-creation of Wolverine, and the opinions were pretty harsh. Terry, who used to be an editor, was
on the Spider-Man books,
and Marvel Comics Presents, and his argument really was, that's a potential opener of a can of worms there, because that could open up. And Terry was naming all kinds of characters that he could take creative credit for because he was the editor on the book when he was editing. When the characters first appeared, and then of course Paul Paul had nothing nice to say about Roy's handler, which he knew, I guess, pretty well, because I guess that guy was trying to work with Paul as well, and Paul didn't have anything nice to say, and was just like, that guy, put him up to it, and he's like, that was more this guy than Roy Thomas, So I mean, it's interesting getting the perspective of a lot of the creators out there. Where it's with us, maybe we're just like, hey, he was kind of involved, he came up with the name. He said he was from Canada.
He was working. He walked in through the door that day.
Well, my argument about that was, geez, I mean, if you're going to give Roy credit, co-creator credit, then give Chris Claremont co-creator credit, because even though he was not involved in the creation of Wolverine, he developed that character more than any of the other creators.
That's a challenge.
I would consider Claremont or Wolverine to be Claremont's character.
See, I hear what you're saying, but I got into an argument a few years back when someone stated that Stan Lee was the co-creator of Captain America, because he's the guy. He's the guy who put Captain in the Avengers. I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that. The guy who created, the people who created it, are the people who created it. What you do with thereafter,
and I agree with you 100%. But if the argument is whether or not Roy Thomas gets co-creator credit, then if you're going to give co-creator credit to Roy Thomas, then you give it to Chris Claremont too.
I thought you were going to be spurious and say, if you're going to give Roy Thomas credit, you didn't give the colorist credit because they're the person who put the colors on the suit.
Right? Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, and it's like, where does it stop at that point? And to me, I mean, I honor all creators. Anybody that has ever written or drawn a story, kudos to you.
We do it on the show. We talk about the inkers, the letterers, colorists, finishers, the breakdowns. We don't just stop and say, "Oh, this guy or that guy." We go through the whole gauntlet.
Yeah, give credit where credit is due.
It's interesting about the Claremont thing, and funny enough, that's going to raise its head later on in the show.
Yeah,
because we have a unique book, I think, from that perspective. But we're going to start off with this absolute doozy of a book. And I think this is probably two creators at the height of their power joining up and just absolutely having a rock and roll and ride for sure. It is Wolverine. It's the limited series. You could call it Volume 1, whatevs. But this is a mini series that was 4 issues long, ran from June to August. Yes, I know it's not 4 months. It's some crazy publishing thing where 2 came out in June and 2 came out in August. I don't know how that works. So, usual stuff on eBay for the 4 issues. You can get it at £250. That's all 4 issues.
Really?
Yeah. Mixed from very fine to fine plus. But,
I was going to say the prices have come down on this limited series then, because when I was younger, this was not an obtainable book.
It's surprisingly how the prices have changed. Go collect, have it, and I've gone grade 9s on all the books today, so you know what I'm talking about. Go collect, have issue 1 at $150, issue 2 at $70, number 3 is $65, and the 4th one is $50. All at grades 9s. So I don't think that's massively expensive for the book that it is.
No.
It's written by Chris Claremont with Frank Miller on penciler duties. Joseph Rubinstein gets the credit for finishers. I can't say this.
Or Zachowski.
Thank you. Is on letters. I've been practicing it all day and I fluffed my lines. Oh no. And Glynis Wen is on colors. There you go. I find it odd. I'll start us off. Here's a question for 10. I find it odd that Claremont put so much effort into Wolverine, considering back what I've read in the time, it was John Byrne that wanted to give it move him up the X ranks.
This is where at this point in time, Wolvie had kind of taken center stage. He was the most popular X-Man by far at this
Cyclops.
point.
Sorry,
Well,
I had something massive.
no, I don't think Cyclops was the most popular. I think Wolverine was, but here, this is the first of the new X-Men that gets his own book, and a limited series at that. And remember, this was one of the first limited series, right? I mean, there wasn't very few before this one, and for Chris, and I think this might have been Claremont's first limited series he ever wrote. So it was a side story that spun off of the regular X-Men book that he was doing. And the great thing about that, and they don't really, they never do this anymore, but Wolverine wasn't in the X-Men for the 4 months that this book was taking place. And then when he returned to the X-Men, it was a direct continuation of the limited series where the last panel, I'm sure you read the whole thing, but the last panel on issue 4 was practically the cover to the next issue of X-Men. And I thought it was really, this is really kind of Wolverine's coming out party, and a huge kind of story builder for parts of his origins and parts of the places that he went, the people that he knew. Because when you look back at Wolverine today, 50 years of continuity, there are sections where you can see the Old Man Logan, or his the Madripoor years, or and of course this is where we find out how much time Logan had spent in Japan, right?
Absolutely.
And this was kind of a great toy box for Claremont to kind of get in and just kind of flesh Logan out a little bit, right? This is his origins at this point, still very much unknown. He could do basically anything. You'll notice reading this limited series, his healing factor is muted, very much so. Where yes, he can be hurt, he can even be taken out of the fight, and he can be faced with a long period of time for his recuperative abilities to kind of kick in. And he's not as super invulnerable as he later becomes. There are I think Yukio kicks his ass in the first, or Mariko's father kind of beats him. Even though he's poisoned, but it's this later on it becomes to the point where Logan can't get drunk because his healing factor takes the alcohol out. Here no problem. He's drunk as a skunk in a couple of these issues. So to me, this was great because his character was so new, and Claremont was doing things. First of all, I think he was going where Frank Miller's strengths lie, and this is like his story, where his storytelling ability. So this really was kind of a match made in heaven as far as storytellers go.
In that fourth issue, you could take out Wolverine and you could put Daredevil in there.
I was going to mention that too, because this does look. It's very much looks like Daredevil. Especially when the ninjas show up, like, oh, hey, it's Daredevil, it's Elektra. Where's Elektra at? So, but the storyline. I mean, this was kind of the first major Wolverine is brown costume, and just basically, kind of giving him a solo spotlight, which he hadn't really had before. And of course, we know how this works out. He becomes Marvel's biggest character of the 80s, and goes on to be appearing in pretty much every book for the next few years.
Tell me about it.
Overexposed a little bit.
Yeah. I liked reading this book. I didn't realize how much of his story had been taken for the movies. In the second Wolverine movie, you get the bear tracking down the hunters and stuff. There's a scene in one of the books where he gets tied with ropes and stuff, and that's again taken from that movie. And it's just so And I think that those two movies, when you consider this book and the further issues of this book, it just absolutely goes to show you how convoluted his origin actually is.
Yeah.
You know, and that comes up on one of the other books we're going to talk about as well. But this is Yukio's cameo appearance. So she gets first phone calls in the second book, which we'll bring up in a second. Give me 2 seconds. Ooh, I have them all here.
It's saying something about while you're bringing up the next issue, saying something about the covers, the 4 covers on this. But basically, these are like almost. Well, this is especially the classic. Everybody rips off the Wolverine pouncing at the camera, you know, with the covers. And you know, it's actually 4 pinup shots, right?
Yeah.
4 very simple. I guess we'd call it like almost elegant, too simple covers, right? Yeah. So, you know, the first issue that we saw has been ripped off a million times, right?
Oh man, if I've seen that on Wolverine a million times, I've seen it on Green Lantern where he's holding his fist and the little rings giving it the ping.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, next.
But these are all the places you've seen them first. So
yeah, exactly. So here we go. He's Daredevil. I mean Wolverine.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was looking at this. You know, the one thing, and you brought up the movies too. When I was rereading this limited series, I was like, why couldn't they have just done a direct rip and made that second Wolverine movie just this?
Yeah.
And like they didn't have to throw Silver Samurai in there. They didn't have to throw, you know, much of anything else. They could have just had Mariko, Yukio. You had enough romance going on, enough action. You know, the ninjas, man. I wanted to see Wolverine fight a million ninjas. You know,
agreed.
It's just everything's great, and that's the panel the second the cover of the second issue came from.
So I think it's a Claremont book, so we know that we're in for a rough ride reading wise. We know we're going to get dialogue, and the Christics in this are absolutely in full force. I'm the best of who I am, but what I do isn't very nice. Yeah, whatevs. You know, all of those things are in this book, so you know you're going to get it.
This was an inking kind of problem here for me on that page.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at his hair. Yeah, the blue ink. They just kind of did a blob of blue ink on there. Blood, the bottom panel too, same thing. Blue, just blob blue.
I think it's interesting because I think Frank Miller's pencils are great. I love Frank Miller's art. At least I like Frank Miller at this time in his career.
Yeah.
I better put that in there. So for me, there are some aspects that don't work so well. I'm not sure if that's his pencils. I mean, Yukio's face changes more times than a Transformer. Or is it an inking issue? I don't know. What you can't get away from is the fantastic fight scenes, the absolutely drama and cinematography aspects of some of those angles. Even when they do the kind of like the lay of the panel 1, 2, 3, 4, as the sword fight progresses, they do that a couple of times in the books. Yeah. And you know, you feel that energy, that kinetic energy is in there.
Yeah.
There is a bit of a pacing issue, I think, somewhere along the line. It tends to jump. So from issue 1, it's like Yukio's like, yeah, I've got you, Wolverine. And then next thing you know, they're waking up in a pad and this, and I'm like, wait a second, what's happened between this and that? You know, even in the first issue, he beats up the guy in the bar. Next thing you know, there's a picture of Mariko there. He's on a plane. It's like, what? You know, it tends to be. I don't know if they're going for like the key, like, you know, the key moments, and then not putting the work in to get you from A to B.
Almost like a cinematic cut.
Yeah.
And on to the next. Yeah.
You don't that swipe thing. Like,
yeah.
But
I mean, it works.
Oh yeah, this book, this mini series. If you love Wolverine and you've not read this book, you need to go and find it, because this is an absolute, you know, it's an absolute peach of a story. It's basically everything you know about Wolverine in 4 issues: how honorable he is, how he fights with his demons, Mariko, Yukio, as you said, alludes to his origins a couple of times. I think this cover, and funny enough, this is for me one of the best covers of the series. But I think this issue probably is the one that suffers the most art-wise. I just don't think it's as tight as the other issues, and I don't know if that's because I feel like we're just kind of, I don't know, holding pattern till we get to the big conclusion that we know we're going to get.
Yeah, and you said it yourself, right? You said didn't they double up on the issues per month? So
Yeah,
it was like almost like a bi-weekly limited series. There might have been a bit of a deadline crunch that they're going into here, but you know, I tend to think that they all look beautiful on the face of it because you go, like you said, with Frank Miller's choreography and everything and storytelling ability. You know, I can forgive the fact that Yukio looks different in every panel, but you know, just when you get something like these dark,
these
kind of gritty, you know, and you said Daredevil, but I mean, you can switch out Batman into some of these too. So it's like, you know, just like the whole dark underside of the city, which for me, this is one of the biggest differences between the Daredevil and the Frank Miller stuff is the fact that it's set in Japan. And so there are some of these, like this panel, second panel down, where it's like these, you know, the billboards and everything, and everything is neon. And even though like your brain is telling you that it's neon and super colorful, even though the colors are kind of muted, you know. So it's like I really kind of there's a couple of other panels too where it has all the neon signs coming down and vertically that Miller used a couple of times in a couple of different issues that I thought were just fabulous and actually took my brain to Japan and made me think of everything that, like when he's going down through the rooftops and everything and fighting the ninjas, and that's all I could see is the background of Tokyo or something, and just thinking how ahead of its time I think it was at this point.
Agreed, absolutely agreed. One of the things that I love is when comic writers stop talking and try and let the art speak for itself. We've seen it a number of times where books are kind of wordless and we just have to follow through. This page and the following page, just look at the action. You know, it's, you know, you can see how everything is working. You know, economy of movement, logic of movement is all there.
Yep.
And, you know, and then Frank Miller Chris Claremont comes in and then spoils it with
tons
of words.
Up to this point, Wolverine's always just been a brawler, right? Yeah. Just like a, you know, fisticuffs, got the claws out. I'm gonna go berserk on you. You never. This is the first time you ever see him with in the samurai aspect, right, or a Ronin kind of perspective, and it really works for him, and that's what I like.
Agreed. This is probably the weakest cover for me out of the bunch, and it is purely just an aesthetic thing. I have problems with his leg. If you're holding your foot like that, that leg should be, his ankle should be under his leg, not to the side of his leg. It's a perspective thing. What can I say? Also, he doesn't need a thing. He doesn't need a crossbow. He's Wolverine, for Christ's sake. Love this. Although this panel reminds me a lot more of John Romita Jr. Does Frank Miller on that one.
I mean, there's a little bit of everything, and I would probably say John Romita Jr. looks more like Frank Miller at that point.
Agreed. You know? That works. Yeah, for sure. Love the detail here on the Mariko's dad. Love all that. That's great. Love the shade on the side.
That's credit to the inker and the colorist there more than Frank, I think.
Great. And then we get to see the full action in place. It's like, right, I'm gonna have my revenge, bring it on. And we get to see more ninjas, woohoo! And of course, welcome. Is it a VAR? I don't know. There's someone else later on. Day steps up to take on the fight again. And again, there's those panels, those letterbox panels, you know, to show the movement. Love this. The first time I read this, I was like, oh my God. But Wolverine's like he's probably using his body to his full extent here. He knows that his bone's going to stop the blade, so that's fine. He doesn't need to avoid it. He can take it. Interesting panel here. This fourth one down where he's doing the cross maneuver. That appears again here. And I had to double check. I was like, is that not just it? But it isn't. Again, no words. So just letting the art speak for itself. The only word is snicked, and we all know what that means.
That's the drama of that page.
Yeah. I could have done without his eyes being red on that bottom panel. I think that spoils it a little bit.
You think that was like him being the berserker comes out?
Yeah, I think it spoils it because in this moment he's trying to prove he's the man, not the berserker. And I think the colorist has kind of got it wrong on this one. They should have just left his eyes as is. Because I think it spoils the moment, the tension. But lovely shades of what's in City is going to happen. There we go with all that cross hatching going on for the windows. And there we go. There's the panel for the X-Men comic that's coming up. Thank God Frank Miller doesn't draw the X-Men all the time. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, what are you going to do? You can't be all things to all people, right?
Yeah. I have to say that it was an absolute blast reading this book again. I absolutely, I call it a book because it's a full issue mini-series thing, and I just read it and I was like, wow, took me all the way back. It was brilliant.
Does it say how come we don't get anything like this anymore?
Well, that is the question. How come we don't get anything like that anymore? But I don't know. I think I don't know. Back then, Wolverine and Bats and comics books were trying to be more serious, which they were trying to take a more mature audience in hand. The 80s. This book came out 88 was it?
80.
82. So this is kind of like up there. We haven't had the Dark Knight Returns yet. We haven't had V for Vendetta. We haven't had Swamp Thing. All those books that kind of made comic books serious again. You could argue that this miniseries was trying to do that for the X-Men.
Yeah, this was Frank Miller post Daredevil, but pre Dark Knight.
Yeah.
So
cool. So they got at the height of his powers for sure. Right, time for a quick advert for one of our other shows. World Crisis and Toyverse. Keep your eyes peeled. You might see Wolverine. You might not. Check it out. I didn't see Wolverine.
I didn't see any superheroes at all.
Batman was there.
Oh, Batman.
Sorry,
Happy birthday, Batman.
Yeah, you've just been dissed by the professor again. Well done. Happy birthday. Here's your present. Talking of figures, I used to have, what was the company that made the Marvel figures back in the 80s?
Toy Biz.
I used to have the Wolverine one, the tan and brown one. I can't remember. I don't think his claws would click on like Secret Wars. I think they were just perpetually out.
Yeah. I think they made one, and I don't know if it was for the X-Men action figure line where his claws popped out. But that first issue's Wolverine didn't. It was just out.
I remember I also bought the Cyclops because he had his white X Factor uniform on. With like the blue with the white X on it.
Yeah. That's one of the better looking ones.
What can I say? Type-Biz figures were all right at the time. We have been spoiled subsequently, though. All right, so we had We had the mini series that absolutely blew everyone away. All right, and it was the bee's knees, the top creators at the height of the power, and then Marvel turned around and said, "You know what? 6 years later, let's have an ongoing Wolverine series." Great.
Yeah.
And this is what we got. This is Wolverine Volume 2, number 1 from November 88. eBay, this will cost you £75. A grade 9 on Go Collect. Averages around 65, although they have sales of $73. So it's about the same wherever you go. Some first appearances. First appearance of the Cult of Black Blade, first appearance of Muramasa, and first Wolverine as Patch.
Whew. That's the first appearance of Tiger too, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Chris Claremont is the writer. John Buscema is on art with Al Williamson on inks. Tom Orzechowski is on letters. I got it right that
you
time.
Got it. I was going to say, good job.
Glynis Oliver, who might have been Glynis Wen after getting married or divorced, I don't know, is on colours. I didn't read this the first time around. I've got to be honest. My friend at the time, my best friend was Craig Hunter, and he loved Wolverine, but wouldn't buy an X-Men book because he doesn't want the superheroes. So he was buying this, and I remember the Wolverine book primarily because it brought Jessica Drew back.
Yep. I'll tell you. So this came out in '87, and my dad at the time lived in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and he lived in downtown Plymouth. And the weekend I visited him, there was a comic book store called New England Comics, and they were having a grand opening in Plymouth. And wouldn't you know, it was about 100 yards from my dad's apartment. So, of course, me and my brothers went to this grand opening of New England Comics. And it was the first issue of Wolverine was on sale that week. And
right.
And of course, I picked it up. And I read it, and I was like, well, what's the big deal? I'm being honest.
I'm with you on this one. This is not the best version of Wolverine.
So, and I'll tell you, I mean, I love John Buscema as an artist. Love him. He looks. Yeah. And you know, Al Williamson inks him fine here. I prefer him. I prefer him inked by Tom Palmer, but Buscema he's at this point, he's definitely kind of like on the downside of the end of his career, kind of. But he's a titan at this point. Like, he is one of the big names at Marvel art wise. So you get a Buscema book, you know what you're getting. He's old school Avengers artist. He's done everything. Conan, you know, you name it, he's done it.
That classic cover where the surfer's coming down and Thor's baseballing him. You know?
That. And this actually takes Wolverine in a different direction from from just what we were reading with the Claremont Miller limited series. This takes him out of the X-Men. This is basically just another. This is his second time being on his own and getting a solo story with just him to rely on, no one else. But it introduces, like, there's Tiger making a first appearance right there. But then introducing, and of course, I believe 13th Crusader told me before this that this was not the first appearance of Madripoor.
Yeah.
I think this is the first appearance of Madripoor that matters. But yeah, and then the one thing I didn't like, that picture right there, that costume, that kind of black, almost Black Ops type costume with that. What do you call that? A mask, or is that a shadow?
So do you remember the Arrow TV show?
Yes.
Right. So every time we watch early season Arrow, and the guy is there with his hood and he's got his eye makeup on covering his face, my wife looks at me and goes, "How do they not know it's him?"
Ha! Right? Yeah.
And you look at this picture and you're thinking, right, who could this be in disguise? Let's see. He's got wingtips for hair. He's got jowls of full of hair.
And claws.
He's got 6 claws. I wonder who it could be. Is it Spider-Man?
So that to me is kind of that's the disconnect here with this issue, is the fact that he's trying to be incognito, but then later on, when he's in Madripoor, and that's the first appearance of Logan as Patch, even though that I don't think they called him Patch yet in this issue, but he's there with the hat and the eye patch, and he picks up Lindsay McCabe he rescues her from almost getting assassinated. But they do mention Jessica Drew, so she's coming. And then, of course, when I saw that, I was like, "Oh, are they going to bring back Spider-Woman?" They don't, which I think is a missed opportunity.
They did. She has the powers, though, doesn't she?
I think she does a couple of venom blasts, but she doesn't crawl on walls. She's not in costume.
Yeah.
But I kind of think she does the venom blast, like not even in the handful of issues she's in. It's like later on down the road.
You could argue she's a precursor to Jessica Jones. Her attitude.
Yeah. I think so too. I think, and in fact, I think this might be where the template came from. Right.
Oh, really? Oh, cool. Yeah.
So I
would say so. I mean, she walks around in a black jacket and denim jeans most of the time in this.
Yeah. But so here is kind of where I see Claremont maybe trying to do things a little bit differently and trying to make Wolverine his own thing, as opposed to kind of having to rely on the X-Men for everything, or even for a supporting cast, because they introduce a bunch of characters that probably the first couple of years of the Wolverine series before Claremont leaves the book, but the whole, like the characters in Madripoor, sometimes, you're just like, man, I wonder where all these characters went. Like, Tiger was there for a long time. They don't introduce any of their characters, like Archie or couple of the guy that runs the casino. I can't remember what his name is, but there's a lot of different characters. Lindsay McCabe and Jessica Drew stick around for a good handful of issues as supporting characters. But it is kind of like a far cry from this book. Wolverine actually kind of ends up being a kind of a book that's a satellite book from the X-Men. It has a lot of X-Men guest starring all the time. Jubilee becomes a supporting character later on. But this first handful of issues where they're actually trying to do something decidedly different, I love one of my favorite covers from this first handful, I think, is Wolverine number 7, which is Logan and Mr. Fix-It, the Hulk, in their white tuxedos.
I've seen it. It's gorgeous.
It's a great cover, great issue. And it was kind of I think it might have been a crossover with the Hulk, but that just was classy, and I liked that they could have fun with this period of time, and they did bring back Patch, didn't Claremont come back and do a Wolverine limited series set in the Madripoor years just a couple of years ago?
It's Marvel, isn't it? Trying to go back to the let's check between the panels, everybody. What you forget is that Madripoor was also the setting for Marvel Comics Presents book.
Yeah. For
the Wolverine story.
Because that was Wolverine and Marvel Comics Presents kind of took off at the same time.
True that.
So,
do you feel? Here's a question for you then. Just looking at the art of this book, I kind of twigged it earlier when I was looking at it. I was like, this art looks familiar. It looks familiar. Where have I seen it? What am I looking at? And then I've seen a couple of panels. Don't you think it looks a little bit like Silvestri was involved? Isn't this some of the style that Mark Silvestri would adopt in his X-Men run?
I think, but if you remember, Silvestri was a longtime artist on Wolverine too later on.
later on. So I think did Silvestri get his style from Ape and late Buscema and then development of his own? I'll say this now before anyone goes nuts and says, how dare you say that? I'll say this. I love Mark Silvestri on X-Men. For me, I love Silvestri on X-Men more than I like Jim Lee on X-Men. That's how serious I am about it. So this is just an observation from some artist who then and Silvestri and the book, the origin. And Professor, we've spoken before about how artists would take on a book and then ape or homage the original stylings until they found the feet.
Well, I think so. I'll agree with you, and I think what Silvestri was a great bridge between Romita Jr. and Lee. If they had done such a stark change and not had Silvestri in there, I think that it might have been less of like maybe Lee might not have been as popular as he ended up being. Because and so of course Silvestri and Lee end up both being Image guys, right? So
Indeed they do. And then Lee, of course, is a DC guy as well. And Silvestri's worked at DC recently, but that's not for this show. You want that? Go find someone else. Don't talk to us about it. But change your pace, a change your style, which I think is a good breather book to get out of all the usual X shenanigans. You know, because if you were like Wolverine or you like a character in X-Men, you want to read about the character. You don't have to want to put up with all the shenanigans of all the continuity that's gone in the past. So, you know, and I think the Madripoor years are a great way of kind of like showing Wolverine without having to worry about the X-Men stuff.
But not only that, but you kind of cut him off from everything that's come before too. Like this, like Sabretooth's not a thing yet in this. Like they haven't really tied them both together yet. And then, you know, they cut off. You think that they might have started him in Japan, right? Kind of revisit the whole Japan thing, but they never really do that. You know, they do good. The Madripoor years were its own thing. And I can look back at it now and say, wow, those were a great handful of issues back then. Here, like I said, when I read the first issue, I was like, meh, you know, it's okay. You know, not my favorite. It's not at the top of the pull list, you know, but now I look back at it and I can appreciate it for what they did.
For sure. All right. So it's my choice. And historically, I have been known to put the cat amongst the pigeons and go a little bit off script. I get that. It's, you know, it's what we do. So I've gone Wolverine, thankfully. However, I have picked what I think is a barnstormer of a one-shot that has no major impact on anything whatsoever in the grand scheme of things. At the time, though, everyone was like, what? It is this absolute beauty. This is Wolverine the Jungle Adventure from November 89. You can get this for as little on eBay between £2 and £8. Go collect, have it at $28. There you go. It's not an expensive book. It's written by Walter Simonson. Mike Mignola's on art with inks by Bob Wycheck. Ken Bruzenak is on letters, and Mark Chiriello is on colors. Did I do all those all right? I think I did all right.
I'll take your word for it.
All right, okay, thanks. Oh my God, what have I done? All right, so back in the day, Wolverine had a couple of one-shots. I think everybody preferred Bloodlust, the Claremont Alan Davis book. To be fair, it looked gorgeous, that one.
Oh, yes. It was great. Yeah. Great looking book.
Great looking book. Again, not a lot happened in it, though. Whereas I kind of went into this book, and of course, I've picked this book up at the time because it's got Mike Mignola on it. And of course, I'd just read Gotham by Gaslight, and I was like, whoa, this guy's brilliant. And yes, I still think he's brilliant. I know he's not your cup of tea, though.
I think that's why 13th Crusader couldn't make it today, because we were talking about Mike Mignola.
Really?
I'm just kidding.
Fine, it's like that, is it? All right. Okay, so basically this is Wolverine meets The Land of Time Forgot meets Jurassic Park and throw some sci-fi at the end. Pretty much how this works. You get to kind of nod. They need to head over to the Savage Land. Picks up a lighter from Nick Fury. You think, what the hell's he know Nick Fury? Yes, we're in dodgy Wolverine Origins territory. Soz. He then goes and hangs out with this tribe, beats the chief, thinks everyone's great. Turns out the chief's a babe. Lo and behold, people in the tribe are going missing. The tribe get a bit Nancy with him, saying, look, you're the god, we've done this, why are you still asking sacrifices? So he goes out and takes on the great big dinosaur himself to find out it's a metal dinosaur. And of course, where metal and monsters are concerned in the whole X-Men universe, it could only be Apocalypse.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Apocalypse. Is it? Is it? Who knows? So I enjoy this because I thought Apocalypse at the time was probably the biggest bad the mutants had. He was in X Factor, like left, right, and center. He destroyed Angel to make Archangel. He was pretty much. I prefer Apocalypse over Mr. Sinister. Mm-hmm. I think they're too similar to for their own good at times. But Apocalypse is Simonson's creation.
Louise Simonson.
Actually, I don't think it is. I've Googled it before I checked. Let me go back and check.
Co-creator. So maybe
co-creators. Yeah. We'll go with that. Co-creator. Yeah. You're right. So we're both right on that one. Whew. All right. So Apocalypse created by Louise Simonson, artist Jackson Goose, Geis even. Apocalypse first appeared in X Factor 5 from '86.
Yeah.
So why is Walter Simonson down as a?
Oh, because Walt comes on X Factor,
yeah,
and Louise and Walt both work on it together for a long time.
Fair enough.
All the Apocalypse you remember is Walt. So.
I love that run of X Factor. Absolutely, it's one of my favorite X books for sure. The art's a little bit different as you'd expect. It's Mignola. He's not your standard superhero fare. It is odd angles. I think it intimates more than it shows, which I like, to be honest. How he gets out of the robe is just pure ludicrous, though. Takes his boot off, whatever. I suppose the big hook for this is towards the end of the book. You see an adamantium skull.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait a minute, did Apocalypse have something to do with the Weapons X project? And of course, this is a line of inquiry that doesn't pan out down the line. So it feels a little bit throwaway at the time. But this just shows even Marvel editorial had no idea where they were going to go with Wolverine's origin.
Oh, yeah. No, they didn't.
And so having Chris Claremont just meander on is a great way of keeping everyone enticed. But then, people get a little bit sick of the same thing, man.
I have a story for you if you want to hear it.
Go for it.
So this was a story told me by Terry Kavanagh about the 8-part Weapon X story in Marvel Comics Presents that explained how Logan got his adamantium skeleton.
The Barry Windsor Smith stuff.
The Barry Windsor Smith stuff. So that was nothing that was requested by anyone. And then one day, Barry Windsor Smith showed up with some preview art of what became Weapon X. And he was riffing basically, and Terry was like, "Oh my God, this is great! Tell this, we want you to tell this story." And Marvel Comics Presents. So Barry goes and comes back with the first issue, and they Marvel editorial takes a look at it, and they said, "This is fantastic. We're releasing this as a prestige format limited series. It's too good to go in Marvel Comics Presents." And so basically Terry gets pissed because he's like, so basically you're telling me that I need to have Wolverine front and center in each of my issues, and he needs to be the main character unless someone comes in, and then unless someone comes in with a good story, then that's too good. And then I need to put bad stories in Marvel Comics Presents. And so basically DeFalco changed his mind and said, okay, you can keep it in Marvel Comics Presents. And he had to explain it to the higher ups that this great story by Barry Windsor Smith was going to end up being in their periodical, their anthology series. Yeah. So I thought that was a really fun story, but you're right. No one had the complaint at that point in time was that the origin hadn't been told, and that Marvel editorial was thinking that they were letting out too much, or they were kind of maybe hamstringing what they eventually might have wanted to do, or maybe what Claremont wanted to do with the character. So I thought it was a super interesting story. But
true.
Anyway, back to the Jungle Adventure.
I think no, it's a great, interesting story, and and it just shows that we think this is. And I think some of the things we've said previously, we always think that. I'll use Marvel for this because we'll talk about Marvel books. We always think of the Merry Marvel bullpen as some place that's like, yay!
Yeah.
When really it's a cesspit of egos and God knows what going on. Well, I want credit for this. Well, I put the staples in, so I want credit. No, my God, get a grip.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I suppose, so it's three things we don't want to see how we're made: laws, sausages, and comic books.
It is very much the Wizard of Oz, where they kind of pull the curtain, like you got to pull the curtain back to see, what's real. Yeah. The bullpen. While everybody at one point everybody did work in the bullpen, it was not a back slapping, handshaking, grand old time for everybody.
No, indeed. What did you think of the adventure? I'm really interested in hearing your point of view, because I know you're not a Mignola fan.
No,
I know you like Walt Simonson.
No, I do like Walt. Don't really like Mignola, but I do think Wolverine is one of those characters that if you write him correctly, you can put him in anything, right?
Yeah.
But he really, really works in the Savage Land. I don't think I've ever read a bad story of Wolverine in the Savage Land, running around with natives and dinosaurs, and so that kind of it raises a level of fun when you can kind of turn the page and see Wolverine going down a dinosaur's gullet and then carving his way out. It's like, that's cool. And then with Wolverine, you could take the costume off him, put him in the loincloth, and he belongs, right? It's just like, okay, I totally buy it. He's and he could be a berserker and just almost Conan level, and just kind of like I totally buy him. That's a great. I don't, like I said, I don't like Mignola, but he draws good dinosaurs. That's good. It was a fun read. I almost kind of think that having Apocalypse at the end of this was kind of like a cop out almost.
Yeah, that's not a bad.
All of a sudden, it's you're doing this whole thing, Fantasyland, and then it ends up being like, what's Apocalypse doing in the Savage Land anyway?
He's taken the tribe, isn't he, to do experiments on them, which I found odd because I thought he experimented on mutants.
He's stealing the High Evolutionary shtick. High Evolutionary did that way before Apocalypse did. It's like, to me, I'm just like, all right, I guess if you need to wrap it up, but obviously the Apocalypse is the main baddie because Walt wrote it, right? Yeah, so exactly. It is what it is, and it is the first meeting between Wolverine and Apocalypse, which you would kind of think, with Wolverine being like over 200 years old and Apocalypse being as old as dirt, that they might have met prior to this. But hey, it was a fun read, fun issue. Yeah. And I did kind of I said Conan on purpose because those tribes, and when the Gawk turns out to be from the chief to be in this sexy woman, they do a lot of like Frazetta kind of poses in there with
the cover has. I mean, the cover is pure. You're right, Frazetta for sure.
Yeah.
If we go back to the cover. Sorry, let me just get back there. Where's it at? There, look, just that pose of it there. Is Frank Frazetta for sure. You're absolutely right.
But I mean, I liked it for what it was. It was a good issue. Like I said, I mean, maybe Mignola was the best choice for this issue. You know, with the.
I like Mignola. I think he works really well on so many different books that I can't help but think he's great. But each to their own, as they say.
Hey, who knows? As I get older, I have different appreciations. So maybe eventually I might appreciate
easy there.
Stuff.
Well, when Hellboy's 25 and we go back and look at it and go, oh man, this is really good. And I'm like, yeah, I told you. Oh, I don't know that because I've not read Hellboy. Okay, I remember I remember Topps Comics did a movie adaptation of the Dracula movie. You know, the Keanu Reeves, Gary Oldman movie, and Mignola did the art in that, and it was gorgeous. I love that. So I'm sure we've talked about it. If not,
I might have that somewhere.
If not, it's going on the list.
We can have a Topps Comics week.
What else did they do? Did they do Zorro?
Yeah, Don McGregor wrote the Zorro books. I could produce Don and have him on, and we could talk Zorro if you want.
Yeah, there you go.
He would love that.
Yeah, let's do that. Good old Zorro, like a bit of Zorro. All right, there you go, Wolverine. You're an absolute star. You're one of the pillars of Marvel universe. Even still now. I'm sure people go to the cinemas to see the Wolverine movies or the X-Men movies because it's got Wolverine in it more than anything. Well, maybe apart from Deadpool, I suppose. So no, tip of the hat, sir. Thank you for your longevity.
Oh,
yeah, and and all the various things that he has gone through. Professor's been an absolute blast.
Thank you, Johnny. As always, a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. My favorite hour of the whole week, for sure. All right, there you go. A mini series and 2 books up. Where else you gonna get that many books on a podcast show?
Yeah. Happy 50th birthday to Wolverine.
Old man Logan. There you go. All right, that's it. So we'll see you again in a fortnight. Don't forget to check out the UCPN for all your other shows that you may watch. So that's Crisis in the Toyverse, and of course, if you like K-pop, you can always check out K-pop Cosmos. Keep your eyes peeled for new shows, which will feature Marvel and DC books currently. I have no date on that one yet, so just keep your eyes peeled. And of course, you've got Al on Comic Crusaders podcast talking to creators as well. It's all there. Cool. It's now football o'clock, so although the Dolphins don't play till 9 p.m. my time, so
New England already played, so
that sucks to be us. All right. Yeah. See you in a fortnight. I've been your host, Johnny Machine Hughes. As always, adios. He says, trying to find the intro. There it is.